Welcome to Between Two Clinicians, the podcast that gives you a backstage pass into the mind of two therapists. I'm Talia.
I'm Adam Luke. We've spent years helping others navigate the complexities of their minds and relationships.
In this podcast, we're flipping the script, and we're sharing our own unfiltered insights. No topic is off limits, and no issue too taboo. We're ready to tackle the tough stuff with honesty and empathy. Let's dive in. Oh, today's episode is going to be bitchin', and we just manifested some good luck for me in the dating world that we will get into in our last chapter. Well, it'll probably come up, but today we will be talking about attachment styles and dating apps and how the two intertwine and how to feel more secure when you are engaging in online dating and not let some of those, as we bucket them, insecure attachment tendencies wreak havoc on or off app if you end up matching with somebody. So that is my brief summary, and I will let you kick us off because I loved when you were like, oh wait, dating apps, and I'm like, yes, let's like hone it in on attachment styles.
Absolutely. Well, so this has been one of those topics that has been like on top of the mind because you know, whether I'm working with people as a therapist or a relational coach or a dating coach, it seems like there's this subconscious trap that pops up when we decide to throw ourselves back out on the market, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when we first download the apps, when we first sign in, people have a tremendous amount of like dopamine and serotonin rushing through them because there's this excitement. Oh my gosh, we're always hearing these phrases, plenty of fish in the sea, and we get on, we put up our best picture, we think so hard and diligently on our profiles, and then we go ahead and spin the wheel and it comes up duds, right?
Yeah.
And
oftentimes.
or maybe not duds is maybe not the appropriate, just no one's a good fit. Right?
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is like we take that information, we immediately then think like, is it us? Right? Or like we go inward, or it's funny because I've sat down with 19-year-olds and I've sat down with 55-year-olds. And what's interesting is how quickly we can come to like self-rationalizations of these imaginary problems, right? Like, oh, maybe it's because I'm over 30. Maybe it's because I have a kid. Maybe it's because
we list all of our potential or perceived flaws. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we go, okay, so this is the reality of my situation.
Yeah.
And then what's crazy is we start spinning the wheel again and then coming back to like, well, which one's the least worst one?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's actually the best way to start off picking a partner is like, well, you weren't ideal.
You weren't the worst, though. Yeah, that's not what I want at the top of my Our Story page. Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like cash for clunkers for your dating world, right? Like you're like, well, you know, I wanted like a Denali and I got this Honda Civic and it smokes. It smells funny too, but
it's like Exhibit
dependable.
With Pimp My Ride.
Oh yeah, exactly.
He's like, I just wanted working seatbelts. So like, we put a hot tub in your trunk. It's like, I don't want this.
You wanted a popcorn machine, right? Like, no, I'm not.
No, I just wanted again a Denali with working seatbelts. That would have been great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is so true. And in the beginning, when you first join the apps, you are rewarded because you're fresh meat. Have you ever transferred to a new school, even decently attractive? That's exactly how it feels to join a dating app with a new profile, or when you press reset, because that's an option on some of them to like give you new, shakes the dice and gives you kind of a fresh batch without deleting it. And that dopamine rush is exciting. Like, who likes me? Who do I like? And if you are feeling otherwise secure, which we'll talk about, we'll give a brief overview of attachment styles. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar, but not from your and I's perspective of like how we would define it. So this will be a good segment to have. You do sometimes feel destabilized if you don't know how to remain in what is either an earned secure or learned secure attachment style. So I think we can segue into like, how would you define secure attachment? Let's start there, and then we'll go to the fun ones of insecure attachment.
Secure attachment. I think the first one that comes to my mind is like just overall safety.
Yeah.
Right. Secure attachment means that I feel like I'm not able to escape the level of love or connection that I have with a person because it's so rooted and it's developed, right? A lot of times it's almost like a sense of self, You
Yeah.
know, you can really tell like secure attachment with young kids based off of like, I want to say, how either bossy or independent they are,
Mhm.
because they've been loved so well that they
Mhm.
can't conceptualize themselves any different in the world. Now that's not a
Mhm.
bad thing, but a lot of times we will interpret it as bad. We actually don't like people who are securely attached,
Yeah.
especially if like
Threatening.
maybe we have insecure attachment or disorganized.
Yep.
We hate these people because they seem so confident.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
like, that's why when I'm working with husbands, I'm like, when you know you're doing good work is when your wife is sort of a boss bitch.
Hmm.
Like, and people don't understand that. They're like, what do you mean by a boss bitch?
Yeah.
No, like, when she's comfortable of like, she's going to do whatever, she's going to pop
Hmm.
up a tent in a
Hmm.
farmer's market, she's
Yeah.
going to start an Etsy page. Guess what? You're doing good
Yep.
work
Yeah.
because she feels securely attached that this isn't going to be a trade off in her personal identity.
That is often how women feel. I can speak for myself, even on the dating apps in the beginning. Like, so I joined when they first ever started. And I also went on OkCupid in high school. Okay, I was
What?
17. I lied. I was 16. Yeah, this was a lawless land decades ago. This will be a good personal
I
share.
was looking for a yacht and an alibi. Like, okay.
I pretty much when I was when I cause so I went to rehab my freshman year of high school. So I didn't have a traditional high school experience. And then I transferred to a charter school, which there was only so many days you'd go on campus a month. And
Yeah.
it's a charter school, so there's a bunch of weird kids there. Like it was a mix of like you got on the wrong path drug wise, and then you got sober. Here you go, and then there was just like weird kids or kids who were actors, and like you just needed the charter
Yeah.
school for whatever reason. And I'm not saying weird as a like slur or a diss. That just wasn't the pool I
It
was
was
going
alt
for.
paths,
It
right?
was, yeah, all paths. Exactly. Great way to put it. So I was like, I'm not going to meet someone at a high school because this is
Mm,
not a traditional high school. So I was like, okay, let me Google whatever's out there. I don't know what,
yeah.
hair got up my ass, but I was like, okay, Cupid. Ended up finding a guy that I dated for like a little over a year on
Oh
there. He was
wow.
so stable, so secure, so unlike the guys that I had dated before.
Yeah.
My mom said he was as boring as watching paint dry. It
Mm,
obviously didn't work long term, but I'm so glad I had that experience because it allowed me to slow down, to stabilize, to feel
yeah.
bored in a healthy way of like, oh, he's not going to cheat. He's not like he was,
Yeah.
again, so too safe, too boring, too vanilla that I'm
Mm,
like, I have a little too much edge for this. It's not going to work. But I remember being on OkCupid and looking at like the infrastructure of it. It's obviously
yeah.
different again decades later. That was my first like intro into online dating, if you will. And then I didn't
Mm,
join again till I was in college, I want to say.
okay.
Bumble was just coming out, Hinge was just coming out. Actually, no, Hinge hadn't come out yet. Bumble and Tinder were just coming out, and you
Yeah.
didn't have to pay for all these new features that you had. Now everything is mostly behind
Oh
a
yeah.
paywall, which I have my own thoughts about, but this is not a critique of dating apps. This is more about attachment styles and dating apps. That it was like a smorgasbord, and it
Hmm.
was it was like the fringe thing to do of like, oh my god, we met on an app. Like how many times have you seen the meme? It's like our parents told us to never meet strangers online, and now we're meeting strangers online and starting
Exactly.
our love story. There was like for older couples like eHarmony, Plenty of Fish. Online dating was had been around.
Oh yeah.
Um, but
But
we
it
just weren't
hadn't been.
it wasn't
I
apps.
like how you put it. The
Yeah.
lawlessness hadn't come into
Yes.
it, right? Like
No, yeah.
eHarmony was like you signed up to do a
It was
200
regulated. Yes,
question, and
exactly.
like you got picked by
You were
the.
looking for a spouse when you did that.
Oh
With
yeah.
that, so it was like almost like a marriage website versus a
Hmm.
dating app. And on dating
True.
apps, we've evolved now that yes, people find their partner, their lifelong partner on it and get married. And there was the, like commodification of dating where people were
Yeah.
like, Tinder's like hot or not. Let's just swipe to have sex or swipe for likes or
Yeah.
validation. I think we've stabilized as a society in the dating world
Mm,
now that people have bucketed themselves into I know what I want off this app. Now there's options for like, do you
yeah.
want a monogamous relationship, non-monogamous? Do couples use it to find thirds? Like
For
we're a
sure.
lot more progressive and stabilized at the same time in our use of it.
Mm,
So it's not as anxiety
yeah.
inducing to go on the app. But if we're talking about, I give this segue to talk about anxious and avoidant and
Yeah.
Disorganized attachment, if you don't feel stable in yourself, and my definition of secure attachment is that you have comfort with closeness, comfort with separation,
Mm,
you know yourself, you're sure of yourself, not overly
yeah.
egotistical, your worth or your validation or your mood is not contingent upon if you're being
Mm,
contacted or not, or if somebody likes you or not. You feel
yeah.
stable and secure. Dating from that place is
Mm,
the ideal, but not a lot of our clients are dating from that
yeah.
place, or they've done the work, they've healed. Now they're going back on the apps. That's the situation I'm in too. But having a child is one of the most stabilizing experiences I've had. That dating to me is this new foreign thing where I'm like, oh, I actually have to work on being excited about this or feeling
Yeah.
the spark or looking forward to it because my mind is preoccupied,
Mm,
understandably, with like, I literally did everything I wanted in life. I checked off the boxes. I did the marriage. I did the
yep.
divorce. I did the kid. I did the. I'm like, I don't know anybody anything. This is the most free I've ever been to date. Like, I get to have it look however I want.
Mm,
Feels awesome. That's what I try to have people strive for if they fall into the anxious, the avoidant, or the disorganized. So, anxious
mm-hmm.
is I am not comfortable with separation. I am far more comfortable with
Mm-hmm.
closeness. I need you to reassure me. I'm very sensitive to your mood shifts. So it's being on edge or feeling like you're maybe not good enough, that you need a partner, that you get anxious if you don't have one. You might fear abandonment if they don't
Yeah.
respond to you. There's protest behavior involved of like either ghosting or multiple texting. If you have this style,
Mm,
a great book to read is called Attached. Amir Levine. He also talks about avoidant, but it's really like an anxious
mm-hmm.
Bible survival guide. Avoidant, I would much prefer separation. I don't prefer as much closeness.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at it just on that spectrum, doesn't mean I can't be close, but there's a tolerance I reach
Yeah.
where I can only handle so much quality or quantity time with a partner before I start to feel engulfed and I need to
Mm,
take literal or metaphoric space. If
yeah.
that's like not texting you back or not spending the weekend or whatever, right? You plan
Mm,
to spend the weekend together and they're like Saturday morning, they wake up, they're like, well, I gotta go, like, see ya. And you're like, what? We were going to be together till Sunday night. And something inside them goes like, alarm bells, not safe,
yeah.
not safe. So if you're looking at anxious and avoidant, they're pretty much
Yeah.
magnetized towards each other because it's like if I'm anxious and you're avoidant in this case on the screen, it's like I really like you and I want to lean in, and the avoidant person is like totally leaning out.
Yep.
All I have to do is stand firm, and you just don't take a step back, just maybe take one step forward, and then I can go, oh, I don't need to pursue you. That's that pursuer
Mm,
distancer dynamic. That can be a whole other episode.
yeah.
Disorganized is one of, in my view, analytically, the most difficult to treat because, in
Mm,
my research and what it shows, is it stems from a childhood experience in which your primary caregivers, who are supposed to keep you safe from harm, are actually the ones
mm,
inflicting the harm.
yeah.
And for an infant and child to try to orchestrate safety and connection and trust in the world when the very people who are supposed to be providing that to them and
Mm,
protecting others from taking it away are in fact not doing that and creating this tension, creating abuse, creating
mm,
neglect, and inflicting it on the child, almost with the pretense that it's not going to have any negative outcome
yeah.
on the attachment style. There is no self trust and there is no other trust. I don't feel
Mm,
comfortable with closeness. I also don't feel comfortable with separation, but I deeply crave wanting to be in a relationship. But I'm so fucking afraid of it because every template I have for it is that I get literally or physically or emotionally hurt or neglected or abandoned. So
mm-hmm.
the tornado inside of a disorganized attached person who is not
Yeah.
getting treatment at all is so painful to go through. They're still worthy of love. And even if they
Yep.
don't believe that, I will say, like, you are still worthy of love if you fall into this camp. It is just going to be brass tacks, a much more difficult path for you to go down because we have,
Mm,
in my view, analytically, a lot more of your childhood and your
yeah.
adolescence to unpack, that it's going to be more storied. It doesn't mean you can't be in a relationship, but the core belief that you have is so deeply ingrained from primary caregivers in a much more fucked up way than like anxious and
Mm-hmm.
avoidant. And it's a lot to heal all at once. So if we're looking at those are all the insecure attachment styles, if you match that just with dating in general or like literally being dropped into a relationship, that's already hard enough. Imagine coming
Yeah.
at it from one of those lenses, trying to find somebody on an app. That's where I'm curious where you would take it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it perfect because where I go in this process is I think that a lot of times when I'm working with my dating clients, they start from a position of anxious attachment, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
we most of the time are jumping onto the apps based off of a feeling of being at a deficit of potential suitors that are around us without the app. Here's
Yes.
the challenge, though, is that the apps actually set us up for more failure than they do success,
Mhm.
because we're sort of in this, I call it the puppy dog mindset of like, pick me, pick me, pick me. I feel like I'm at a pet store, right?
Mm.
And so what ends up happening is normally you'll get that anxious individual who's on this app. Now someone has shown that there is some level of they're attracted to them, and then all of a sudden it's almost like there's this flood or a need to perform,
Yeah.
or like what I've sort of called it in my side is like this need to capture. Another way is
Mm.
called cuffing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I've all of a sudden I have to lock this person down, but I'm trying to create secure attachment in the most insecure ways, right? Like, and this is
Ah.
probably where some people are going to start turning off from the podcast,
They're
but
like,
like
"This hurts."
if you are in this process of meeting a complete stranger and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the most intimate positions with this person,
Mhm.
you've actually over leveraged yourself most likely.
Yeah.
There are, and I have clients, I have people that I know in my life that casual sex is no big deal for them.
Mhm.
What we need to talk about is that there's actually a majority of individuals that they can't actually handle that.
No, they
But
cannot.
when we also have to talk about, a lot of people don't like to think about this, but uh, people may also start their process of getting on these apps, and being in a avoidant attachment style, which is I'm
Yes.
hurt or I'm
Yeah.
betrayed, I'm
Yep.
frustrated,
I don't
I'm
wanna really
angry.
connect and commit, I just wanna see what's out there, but I'll be aloof. Yeah.
That, and I think that there's another step past that. We will
Yeah.
tell ourselves like that's what I want, and then we get on, and that like hedonism takes
Yeah.
over. Where like all of a sudden it's like, well, I would like just I want to sleep with someone.
Mhm.
I want to get to the sort of that primal nature of myself, and then that's that morning after situation of being like, oh, what have I gotten
Yeah.
myself into?
Mhm.
Because I actually
Mhm.
used my anger as a justification to download and get on this app. So I think
Mhm.
it's important. When I work with individuals, sometimes I haven't taken individuals on in dating coaching based off of saying like, I don't actually believe that you're in a process of you're looking to share your life with someone. That's the secure attachment side of like, I'm comfortable in who I
My
am.
goal in
And
dating is to find a lifelong partner, yeah.
yeah, I'm looking for someone who's like the way that I've always used it is like a fellow journeyer in this process, right? Like, are they traveling with me?
Yeah.
Um, because if you're starting it as this relationship is going to be the next thing that fixes me, that
Mm.
is that like textbook definition of anxious attachment, which is the next relationship is going to be the one that heals me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what normally gets us into that position of being over leveraged or doing things that
Mhm.
we would have normally not done
Mhm.
because we felt like it was necessary. It was a payment or there was some sort of guarantee
Mhm.
beyond this. Um,
Mhm.
Along with the fact that like disorganized attachment comes in, which is we have trouble dealing with our emotions, but we don't have a difficulty when maybe we're dealing with just physical connection. And
Yeah.
that's why like some people
It's
will bring
safer.
up like we had amazing sex or the chemistry was so great, but this
Mhm.
individual's giving me hot and cold and hot and cold.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
they're actually sort of sharing with you the level of distress they're in,
True.
which is I am disorganized. I don't know what I want, but there's certain things that I can do well. Um, it's just interesting when we build whole entire relationships off of our physical compatibility,
Yeah.
and then we're surprised that after a while we actually have to talk to the other person.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think from what you're also bringing up, the chemistry piece, I think you and I have talked about chemistry versus compatibility. Chemistry has you sleeping with people that you don't like. It's the strongest force of human
Hmm.
instinct to make sure that we all survive and procreate. If I'm looking for somebody where my genes are going to be a great match, we have this sense of chemistry. And this doesn't mean they make a good long-term partner. This is fraud. Like this is very well talked about in evolutionary psychology and neuropsych,
Mm,
who we're attracted to as our type. Not
yeah,
everybody has the same type, otherwise the species
yeah.
wouldn't survive. And we have to come at it from, yes, attachment styles are one part of this, but at the core, as just
Mm,
human beings, human instinct, we are supposed to further the species on the planet. That's part of our purpose here. Whether you choose to or not, that's your instinctual drive to do so. We can't argue with that. And then we do see that come up when people are into certain phases of their life that sex and intimacy maybe don't go to, right? There may be maybe some people insecure attachment mostly. I'm looking for intimacy with commitment. But if I have an insecure attachment style, or I don't feel, again, comfortable with both closeness and separation, what I'm looking for is intimacy without commitment. But for anxiously attached, I do want that, but I'll feign that I don't. And for avoidance, they'll feign that they do want it to get what they want. All of us are just trying to get our needs met. But again, chemistry is not the best indicator of long-term compatibility by any means. It's an indicator maybe of genetic compatibility, whether or not you actually have a fruitful attempt at procreation, if you will. Chemistry is created in moments when we feel a lot of attraction. It doesn't mean we should act on it. It's also something that can be falsely elicited when we're looking at somebody's best foot forward on a dating app. And if you've ever met somebody in person, right, the IRL meet cute, which is everybody's goal, still my goal. I love a good meet cute, and I love it in movies too. That your level of attraction to that person is based off your real experience of them, not who they're portraying themselves to be. It's this internal thing of like, I need to go, find out more about that person. You may not have ever matched with that person on a dating app. You might find somebody so attractive, or you might find yourself attracted to somebody, they might find you attractive, and you get to know them and their sense of humor and their this and what, the vibe is there. Chemistry aside, the vibe is there between both of you. But if you had seen them on an app, what if they had terrible pictures, no prompts, whatever, and you're judging it based off of that? So I think taking the approach when you're looking at online dating, being realistic that yes, you want somebody. Let's say you even are looking with intimacy without commitment. You still don't probably want to be treated like a piece of shit or a piece of meat. Like, you can still have standards even if you're not looking to get married. What are those standards? What are some things that we can, maybe Adam and I today can help you with, of like, here's a template to work from that feels similar to a secure attachment style while you're working towards it. That can be a framework that you start to filter from in your online dating. That's more like the strategy of it. Or even in dating, like, what are behaviors that you will or won't tolerate no matter how hot the person is, and write those down before you find somebody really hot and start making concessions, right? We have the best boundaries until somebody, at least as women, we have the best boundaries until somebody's really hot or really rich, because of those provisions. You could provide me genetics, funny. Or you could provide me funny, right? Because then I'm spending
Pete Davidson's run the mat with being just funny.
Well, it's true.
And maybe rich. Yeah,
but think about it. If you're laughing so much, your eyes are closed, you don't have to look at them,
Exactly.
But yeah, we want you. Yeah, you're telling me there's a chance. I love humor too. That's one of the things. I need a partner. You need to at least think I'm funny. I would also like you to be funny, but the most important part is that you laugh at my jokes.
You will laugh at what I say.
You will laugh. I can guarantee it. You might cry too, but you definitely will laugh. So what are the things, what are the behaviors that you are desiring? Like, what is your purpose for dating is the question to ask. What is the goal? Be honest about it. I do think that's an upward trend on apps that I've seen. People are more honest now that they're like, I'm just looking to have fun. I have a busy life. I just want somebody to go on a date with once a month. Be real, say it with your chest, whatever your goals are. You will be more likely to meet somebody who's having has a similar goal or an aligned experience. That lessens the likelihood of anything attachment-wise getting activated, because you're not trying to be someone you're not and try to date somebody who's being somebody they're not. Nobody's having the real conversation about what you actually want from each other. And the anxious attachment is, but what if I tell them and they leave? It was never a relationship to start with or to begin with. If it's a non-starter from the jump, if you were honest and the person wouldn't choose you because of it, or choose to pursue a dynamic with you based on your desires, and anybody had those desires they'd say no to, it's not worth it. But that goes to the core fear, but then I'll be alone. You're going to have to be comfortable with being alone. That's another hallmark of secure attachment. You're okay being by yourself. You don't see it as a negative, and you actually prefer or enjoy your own company, at least. Hey there, listeners. Are you tired of settling for less than you deserve in your relationships? Do you ever feel like you're not being seen, heard, or valued the way that you want? Or maybe you've been wondering why you keep attracting the same kinds of people into your life, or why certain patterns seem to repeat themselves in your relationships. The answer might be deeper than you think, and you can find it in my new course. Rewire Your Relationships is a transformative course designed to help you stop settling for less than you deserve and start embodying your most confident, assertive, and authentic self in your relationships. You'll explore how your early experiences and parental influences have shaped your views on love, dating, and self-worth. This isn't just about tips and tricks for dating. It's about understanding the core beliefs that drive your relationships that you attract. You'll learn how to break free from those old patterns and start creating the kind of connections that truly reflect who you are. Imagine stepping into a relationship with clarity and confidence, knowing you're attracting people who value and respect you for who you really are, your deeply authentic self. The Rewire Your Relationship course gives you the tools to rewrite your relationship story, one where you're no longer settling, but thriving. Visit taliabombola.com/rewireyourrelationships or check the link in the show notes for more.
The thing that I go to is this idea that if you are trying to navigate this process without non-negotiables, then everything is on this like slippery slope. I mean, and that's why you need to come into this process with what are your non-negotiables.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's going to be someone that presents with a non-negotiable that you haven't said out loud, and you will trick yourself into, well, I think I can make it work. And then
30 rack a weekend isn't too much drinking, but I would prefer somebody who's sober. I'll make an exception because they're hot. Yeah, it's a very slippery slope.
So, but, you know, I have this, well, I'm going to share it here, but I have this exercise that I use with my clients on like, instead of writing a profile on like putting yourself up for sale, what would the profile of your perfect match look like?
Smart.
Right. And I want you to focus on the emotional components, the relational components, not the 6'5" and 100K. Like
7 baby mamas in a felony. Did you say 6'5"?
Yeah, exactly. Like this is where we have to move into what is a person you're trying to attract, and now step back and say, would I appear attractive to this individual? Like, and this is where at times people are like, well, so are you shaming? I'm not shaming people, but I'm just saying like, here's what I know. If I'm going to go fishing, I know what bait I'm going to use because I'm targeting a certain fish.
That's fair.
You can't be surprised when you throw yourself out there and you get catfished. Well, were you fishing with shit? Because that was probably what you're going to get. But there's a level of honesty that comes back to the secure attachment.
Yeah.
Am I okay in saying these are my standards and I'm going to ask someone to step up instead of asking myself to hunch down?
And these are like, it's an accurate portrayal, not only visually, but linguistically, like what you're writing in your prompts. Put your actual age, put your actual stats. And you don't have to have a like unclothed or partially clothed full body photo. Have going on a hike, doing something where the person can see visually. That is fair to have that and be honest with what it actually looks like, not use pictures from 5 or 10 years ago, because yes, people don't like getting catfished, but why catfishing? We're not talking about the dangerous side of it, but just like the disappointment of like, this isn't who I thought it was. We all get our hopes up before we go on a date. That's why I don't recommend having too much communication prior to the date, because you can find yourself, you're talking about a slippery slope. I've worked with so many college age students, guys and girls, even adults, who are like, yeah, we ended up like sexting or finding nudes, or they tried to initiate it and we hadn't even met yet. It's this over falsity of how intimate or how close we actually are. And then if you do find, because based on what they showed you, you're like, oh, but they're hot. I can do it because they're this. Then you go to meet up with them in person and you're like, I would have never sent any of that or talked about any of that. I don't have any, oh my God, the shame that you can actually avoid slipping into by being authentic from the start and not engaging in any behaviors that you feel like, again, are inauthentic to you. If you like sending photos before and it's never failed you, go for it. I'm not one to judge. If it works for you, great. But you and I are in the business of people come to us because the shit they're doing doesn't work for them and they want help with a different strategy or to reach a certain goal that they just they haven't met it yet for some reason.
When you're touching on the fact that like, sometimes my clients get frustrated with this, but something I bring up is online dating is moving really closely to sex addiction. And again, this isn't about shame. It's about the fact that like the reason why sex addiction is so powerful is because it works. Like people are used to being in this extremely like euphoric gourmet experience way faster than we're supposed to be in And then, man, that speaks to a lot of things in the dating relationship. Like, why would I be sexting with a stranger? I think that that actually speaks to like the level of desperation of the connection that I need.
True. True.
But I need to know this, right? Like Superman didn't go fight crime not knowing that he had problems with kryptonite, right? So like what is your
Yeah.
kryptonite?
Yes.
Like if you're going to be going into the dating realm, you need to know what your kryptonite is and you need to know
Mm-hmm.
what level you're willing to take exposure. I hope that
Mm-hmm.
answer for you is zero, but
Mm-hmm.
people will have these like, well, I can get really close to it, right? Like, well, how close to the flame do you need to get before you accidentally fall backwards and
Oh,
burn your
yeah.
source?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
that's what happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's also like something that I use a lot, and if people who've worked with me will know it, I talk a lot about like trying to find how much are you willing to let yourself be cherished, right? Like, how
Mm.
much are you willing to let yourself be pursued? Because these aren't bad things.
Mm-mm.
But what we're sort of taught is like, oh no, I have to, right? There's these giant
Yeah.
senses of obligation. I'm
Yeah.
over 30s. This is what I need to do. Oh,
Mm.
I've got a kid. This is my
Mm-hmm.
reality I have to move into. Right there, I'm going to tell you, like, reject those negative narratives and move into, like, what are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
Because you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together after he falls apart. Like, it just doesn't work.
Prevention is the best cure. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we have to go to like, if you wanted someone who was going to pursue you and cherish you, you
Mm.
probably aren't going to get that from the stranger who's texting you, you dirty little whore. Like, that's not the person that.
Would it be the ideal though?
I loved this. Like just watching your body posture change. Like, wait a second, okay? Like, do we
But
have to take this?
I'm just gonna say that if that fantasy came true, a lot of girls would be like, "That's what I want." And because media has fed us that that's the exception to the rule. Well, so and
True.
so met at a bar and hooked up and they got married and blah blah blah. They're the exception. They're not the rule. This is not for you. That's my favorite trend on social media
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, my ex texted me whatever, and then they show an engagement ring, and the person goes, "This is not your sign. This video is not for you. Swipe left, whatever it is.
Yep.
Like, look again."
Exactly.
You nailed it. You are not going to find the long lasting romantic, I want to cherish you,
Mm-hmm.
pursue you, provide for you, love you, gender regardless. Like that, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to want to be that type of partner for you if I see you as just a sex object or somebody that I can get my rocks off with.
Exactly.
And I'm not shaming casual sex. If that's something that you choose to engage in and that's your goal and you're honest about it and you find
Absolutely.
somebody, go for it. Be safe, please. Like, don't get any diseases or bring any children in the world that you don't need to. Those aside, have at it. But a lot of people are settling
Mm-hmm.
for, at least I'll have that with somebody and
Yeah.
hope if they'll fall in love with me or whatever, I'll turn this into something because so and so had that happen. I can almost guarantee you that is not going to happen that way. It's also
Mm-hmm.
because both of you are not authentically being in the real relationship in front of you. You're engaging in a projection, a hope, a wish, a
Yeah.
fantasy, and you might not share that. If I have anxious attachment and they have avoidant attachment, our goals are misaligned. I want to get close.
Yeah.
They don't want that. It's not going to work at the current status that it is without, if you're in a serious relationship and you have
Mm-hmm.
those opposing attachment styles and you read the books, podcast, couples therapy, great. I don't know many fuck buddies, to be honest, that are like, yeah, send me this podcast. I'd love to read this book about
Mm-hmm.
attachment. That's basically a relationship at that point. If you're able to have those
Yeah.
in-depth emotional conversations and the kind of physical intimacy, all you're missing is the conversation. Why isn't this more actually
Mm-hmm.
than it is right now? And that's
Yeah.
where the honesty comes in. Like you're saying, know what your kryptonite is and know what activates whatever attachment style you have. And I remember walking with, this was years ago before I met my ex, walking with my therapist, and I said, I actually feel really secure. I've done a lot of work on my anxious
Mm-hmm.
attachment, and I had. That is still true even in retrospect, looking back to that day on this day. And I said, but I find it odd now that I'm trying to date again.
Mm-hmm.
I feel some of the anxiety coming back
Yeah.
on the apps. And she said, well, of course, and this is where I got my competitive chess clock analogy that day. It dawned on me after our session. She was like, of course, because it's not being activated. Anybody can feel secure once they've earned it if there's no
Mm-hmm.
activations. Like I talked to you off air, if the chess clock is on the table with the
Mm-hmm.
chessboard and no one's playing the game, the springs are loaded, but nothing's getting activated. Two
Correct.
players sit down, push ready begin, Now with the intensity and the
Mm.
intensity is going to escalate. How much am I going to get activated and by what are also questions that you need to ask yourself, both anxious and avoidant. If they
Mhm.
want to go on more dates than one a week as an avoidant person, that's too much for me. As an anxious person, one, are you
Mhm.
kidding me? I need at least whatever. So knowing, again, attachment is only
Mhm.
part of the framework. You as a person, your nervous system, your orchestration, construction, your goals, your values, what
Mhm.
type of relationship you want, say it with your full chest in the beginning, get the vetting process out of the way so you're not wasting your time on the apps or
Mhm.
wasting somebody else's time off the apps or your own going on dates that are going to lead to not where you want to go. Not just lead to
Absolutely.
nowhere, but they're not going to lead to where you want to go. That's the filter to look through it from in a secure way.
Mhm. And I like to throw one more thing out there because I always like to have a balanced view. I'm
Mm-hmm,
just thinking
mm-hmm.
that like maybe some listeners would be like, Adam, you're being hard on the women. I think there's also a need to be hard on the guys, which is
Oh, I can't wait for my turn on this. Go
okay.
ahead.
So because a lot of guys will come into the relational space not knowing what they want, right?
True.
So I everyone wants to say, well, they're just every man's a fuckboy. Not everyone. Now on these
A
hinge,
lot of them are though.
yeah, like there is a majority there, right?
Yeah.
What you'll have is you'll have guys that will start taking on roles that again aren't what they would primarily work
Right.
out of because
Right.
they've been told, oh well, good guys finish last, you got to be
Yeah.
the bad guy, you've got to
Yeah.
do this.
Treat her
Like
like
and
shit. She'll love it. They're like, what? Yeah.
well, I think the other side is like
Don't say
they
how
feel
you
like they
feel.
want to go
Yeah.
lasso a free spirit. Like, oh, I found
Mm.
this girl at a party and now I'm trying to lock her down into a relationship. And
Oh,
this
I've
girl
heard that
doesn't
too.
want a
No,
relationship.
she's not
She's
done.
in a great spot in her life. She wants to do what she wants. Yeah, but she doesn't want to be saved. Like,
That's us
y-
looking at the bad boy turning them into the good guy. The opposite of that heteronormatively
absolutely.
is the guy being like, I can round her edges out. Like, no, she's not done in that phase of her life yet.
Well, and you're not supposed to be the river, right? She's a
No.
rock that she'll
Yeah.
round herself out when she
Mm-hmm.
gets ready.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
but a lot of times guys won't come into what am I actually looking for. So they'll put on the like cool suave
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and then they're actually wanting to be super committed, and
Mm-hmm.
it scares people off. Why? Because it starts to feel like such anxious attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Because it
Mm-hmm.
like
Bait and switch.
I feel like in some ways, anxious attachment in girls presents completely different as anxious attachment in boys.
Yeah.
Like like in men, it presents as like control,
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, yeah.
which is like, ooh, I want to lock it down to how we behave and whatnot.
Yep.
Where there seems to be a freeness that'll pop out with women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like finding out how do we blend this. But again, it comes back to like you're responsible for knowing what your non negotiables are.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might be able to already sort of draw some of this information out of the conversations you're having if
Mm-hmm.
someone wants to be at Nokia Live every Friday night.
I don't
And
think they're going to want to settle down anytime soon.
other
Yeah.
yeah, they're probably not going to be wanting to watch Hulu. Like
Uh-huh.
that's it's
But I
probably
don't
not.
think we look at people's profiles with an honest, not unbiased, but like we don't look at it from a lens of like, let me genuinely look at what's in front of me.
Mhm.
We look at it already with this little filter of like, oh, I want all of these things in my life. Let me filter it. Oh, Nokia Live, I could fix that. That like we're looking at it like
Mhm.
we're a general contractor that no one hired to redo a house and then knocking on the front door and the person's like, no, I like it as is. And we're like, you're going to like this a little bit better. And then we start getting to work and they're like,
Yeah.
I don't want this to happen. Like if no one's
Do you see your
hiring, yeah,
firing? I didn't
right.
want to fire
Yeah.
him.
I
It's
didn't
really
want,
nice though.
I put a hot tub in your trunk, right?
Yeah,
Like the
exactly.
person has to want what you're wanting or want those changes or modifications. If they are a free spirit and they want to remain a free spirit, as hot as they are, as
Yep.
whatever edgy, right? And get this goes, we all have our own traits that we find really attractive. It doesn't matter if the person
Mm,
has all of those. If they have even one of the traits you cannot tolerate, is a deal breaker, would never stand for again, and you know would lead to demise in a dynamic with you can't pick them. It's disappointing. I understand that. But if nobody's told you this before, you can't get everything you want
yeah.
in life. And that especially is true when it comes to your dating partners. There is
Mhm.
not one person who's going to have both everything on the list of everything I find hot, everything I want,
Yep.
everything I need, and none of the other deal breakers. You can find all that stuff, but they're going to have deal breakers. You got to give to get in some ways,
True.
and they might not be as tall as you're thinking, or as
Mm,
curvy, or as whatever trait you're looking for, but
yeah.
are the things that genuinely matter known to you and present in the dynamic
Mm,
enough for you to want to commit to. This is kind of late stage on dating apps or
yeah.
in dating, but it does flip it on its head, teach you how to write your profile to filter for what you're really wanting. And I suggest, we talked about this a bit too off air, I want to mention it before I forget, limiting, not having it send you notifications. You need to be in control of the dopamine source. This is true of
Mm-hmm.
any app that does push notifications. You don't need no Instagram, no face. Like, I don't need to be that connected. I like to
No.
log in when I like to be in control of
See
when
what's
I get
happening.
that. Yes, I get that hit of whatever. And same thing is true for dating apps. It's distracting. Set a timer.
Mm,
This is what I tell all my clients. Set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes, maybe once or twice a day, depending. For the
yeah.
ones who are avoidant, it actually trains them, oh, I have to check this. For the ones
Mm-hmm.
who are avoidant, it trains them, I can't be obsessive about this. So it works for no matter your attachment
Mm-hmm.
style. Secure ones are like, yeah, that makes sense. I already do that. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good for you. So it trains you to be like, I'm in control of this.
Yeah.
And because it's every day, the 24-hour clock, you're not going to miss a match or miss a this, because some people are anxious with like, but what if, I'm like, you're logging in just once a day, maybe a couple of times,
Mm,
and you're being intentional. You're not
yeah.
just throwing out so many. And now that they limit your likes with the
Yep.
on Hinge, with unless you're paying for it, which for me, I joke with my brother, and he's like, fucking ruthless. And I'm like, next, next, next. And like, I am ruthless because I know exactly what I've dated a long time. I've been in a lot of relations. Like, I know what I'm looking for and not looking for.
Your
And I have
non-negotiables are well outlined.
well outlet, and I have that gut instinct, because also for chemistry, I'm aware it's not just like height I'm not looking for.
Yeah.
I know what these, if you're not putting effort into your profile, you're not going to put effort into a dating relationship or an actual relationship. That's
For sure.
something I learned from my friend who's a dating coach too. She like corroborated it. I'm like, wait, you teach people that too? She's like, yeah, of course. Like, that's a good ideology to have. Knowing that I am ruthless, they should have a
Mm,
limit for dislikes. But I make that, please don't, actually, if you're listening to this, and my friend Logan works for Inge too, I'm like, don't limit it. But it's a funny joke. Like, yes, you should limit likes so people
yeah.
aren't just liking everyone and seeing who likes them back. Be
Mm,
intentional about the 10 or 15 minutes you're using, and
yeah.
try, if you feel comfortable, not necessarily giving out your number, try to move off the app with people that
Mm,
feel like they would be somebody you'd want to spend, a coffee, a date, or whatever with. That's a whole controversial topic
mm-hmm.
too. Would I want to sit across from this person for an hour and get to
Yep.
know them? Try to move those ones off the app with recent, like maybe 1 or 2 weeks if you can,
Yeah.
and see what it's like. Give it an honest go. The sign of a good first date is that you'd like to have a second date, not that you're planning the wedding by the end of
Mm,
it. That's the red flag that people fall into.
oh yeah.
Don't dress rehearse that. Be the Homer Simpson meme where he's walking down the staircase in the wedding gown after not even a date, but just texting. Like,
Yeah.
rein it in and be
Deep
diligent
breath.
about a real relationship in front of you. What are they
Yeah.
literally telling me out of their mouth? Not, what am I projecting and fantasizing?
Mm,
What are they literally telling me? I'm really busy right now. Okay, I'm not going to try and convince you out of it or prove my worth to create time in my schedule. All right, you let me know when it comes to that. And if they don't
mm,
want to take it off the app, getting the number thing, I think sometimes we have a bad taste in our mouth
yeah.
about it because it can turn bad quickly. If you want to keep it on the app till you meet, then exchange numbers, or
Mm,
exchange right before for like scheduling purposes, that's fine
yeah.
too. But the goal of being on these apps isn't to have everybody writes it, pen pals, this, that. I agree with that. You want to move it, and that
Yeah.
helps you feel more secure as well, because you're not getting spun up in all of these
Mm,
styles where you're like, but I want to chat, but I want to this, but I want to have my options. If you're monogamous and your goal is a long-term monogamous relationship,
yeah.
you start with options, you pick one option. That's it. Like, that's the purpose of dating. So knowing
Yep.
your purpose helps you to get off the app faster, to find what you're really looking for, whatever that might be.
Yeah. I mean, the app is where we're going to create connection, but it can't be the primary source of the connection.
Yes,
So,
correct.
and I think that also highlights that if a person just wants to stay on the app,
Yes.
that's also probably their anxious or avoidant attachment that's
Hmm.
already coming out.
Hmm.
Like, how committed are you here? Because there's a lot of people that use the apps just for white noise in their own life,
Exactly. Just some
right?
another app to check and chat, and yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
I'll say it's definite huge red flag, but what's interesting is like in my couples counseling that I've worked with, wives who have found their husbands on their apps.
Mm-hmm.
What is interesting is that a lot of times these husbands weren't actually ever intending to meet someone in person. Now, this
Mm-hmm.
isn't a justification, it's not a permission slip.
Right, right.
What they were doing was 100% wrong.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the fact that a lot of us will catfish in these.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we want the instant gratification of getting a like or getting a message,
Yes.
when in reality, it's like this person wasn't ever actually going to commit to what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a lot of people out there that have gotten stuck in these relational patterns where, like, you actually reach out to unavailable individuals
Mm-hmm.
and you stay rooted in, like, you essentially have this constant noise of pursue, 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 and this person was never going to commit.
No. And if they're passive enough to use the app in that way, then they're going to receive your pursuit of like, all right, like, okay, a hot person, a hot girl, somebody I find at least decently attractive enough to go on some dates with or hook up whatever with. And then it just kind of unfolds into something that is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily, again, the best story for an R story page. Joking, if you don't want the traditional path of marriage, that's fine. I'm also now on that page too. I'm like, not like fuck marriage, but it's like there's a season for it. And if you're really committed and the person you're also with is committed to like what is the covenant and tenets of marriage, please get married. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
have that mutual agreement or mutual vision with somebody and you're the only one holding it, that's where my jadedness and bias view comes in, especially
Yeah.
given what I just went through. Like, that wasn't worth it. And my stance now is it's not worth it until somebody can match those standards and match the appreciation and the
Mm-hmm.
reciprocity of the fact that you and I study this for a living. I've dedicated my whole life to helping other people have better relationships in my couples work. That's
Yep.
exactly what I do. They seek us out, but there's a bias inherently. They seek us out because they're in pain or in trouble and
Mm-hmm.
struggle, and they want help. That's the
Yeah.
key. Both of the couple, well, some people don't, but that's a whole personality disorder thing. The true couples who come in wanting to utilize couples therapy to repair, to grow, they're like, we messed up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite kind of couple to work with. But that's also a skewed view that I have that I
Yeah.
needed to unlearn, that isn't necessarily the case in my romantic partnership. We tried
Mm-hmm.
couples therapy. We tried all of the stuff. I read the books. I read the podcast. I asked him to. I wasn't forcing him and being like
Mm-hmm.
ultimatuming. I asked. It never happened. He's not wrong that it wasn't a priority for
Mm-hmm.
him. He's allowed to feel that way. I'm also allowed to say, I don't want to be in a partnership with somebody where that isn't a priority, rather than
Correct.
stay and try to convince and try to make him into somebody he's
Mm-hmm.
not, which I take ownership of. It is a terrible feeling when you're interacting with somebody and they're trying to make you into somebody you're not. All of us have parents. Hello, we know what that feels like.
Yep.
It is unfortunately, though, an unintentional but often common outcome of being in
Mm-hmm.
a partnership where you outgrow each other over time, but you've made this lifelong commitment in a
Mm-hmm.
time where it's like the 1 to 2 year mark, where a lot of couples are like,
Yeah.
I love them, I want to marry them. Limerence doesn't really wear off till the end of 2 years hormonally. I don't recommend couples get engaged. Engaged, fine. Do not get married or sign anything legally binding you, because it's a son of a bitch to get out of. I can tell you that here in the state of California. It's a lot of paperwork. Your love is going to go away, and the person you marry isn't who you divorce. The reason why I bring all of this up is because when you're on a dating app looking for a partner, looking for a match, like you were saying, I was
Mm-hmm.
just on it passively and it happened. We need to be responsible for all parts of the relationship. And if we're not doing
Mm-hmm.
our due diligence of how to maintain the
Yeah.
connection, even if we didn't mean to get into it, if we're not doing due diligence of how to maintain it, or
Mm-hmm.
we're not looking at the person's profile where they clear as day, we're like not going to be committed to whatever and we're shocked by it. Be real with what you're reading. Do not
Yeah.
project, as much as you can, try not to project onto it what you wish it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
or what you think it's going to be, and not ask and verify what their goal is. You have to be in a real relationship with the person in front of you, not a fantasy. Yeah. And then I have 2 anecdotes, unless you have anything else to add, that are just
Oh, I
funny.
think that was a mic drop right there.
Okay. My first anecdote is my own journey being on a dating app currently, again, has been very interesting now as a mom,
Mm,
because I have it on there that I have a child, and I tinker with like it's listed. So it's the filter when
yeah.
people put like it's a deal breaker for somebody who has kids, I wouldn't show up on their profile. I tinker with putting it visually on there and taking it off the profile, but it's still in the database. So that's honest. there are some people who have kids who don't put that they have it at all. So the filtration system is all off. I don't recommend doing that. Again, be honest on your profiles. But
Mm-hmm.
I can't, I was so nervous to go back and being like, because I heard all the stigma, a single mom, or this or that. I never ascribed to it, obviously, because that's just not how I view myself.
Yeah.
But I know other people view it differently. So I'm like, all right, crapshoot, we'll see. So far, the only people who have had a problem with it are other men or men with kids. And they've like, we've chatted a little bit and they'll be like, oh, wait, you have a kid too. And I'm like, yeah, just like you. And they would unmatch. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what kind of fucking double standard is this that you get to be a single parent, but not both of us can be? I'm not shitting. Like, I understand that people have their own values, but it's so ironic that I'm like, that's where we're going to draw the line. But I can tell you that the women I've matched with, nobody has a problem with it at all. They're like, oh, that's cool. How old's your daughter? Oh, that's great. Like, they don't bat an eye to it. They're so much more accepting and understanding. So I'm
Mm,
not saying that maybe if you're a girl on the dating apps and swiping on guys and you're frustrated that you should like go to the other side, so to speak. But what I am saying is it really is eye-opening when you're smart about your filters. And this, the lesson is like when you're open and honest about what you're really about, it gives the other person an opportunity to show you who they are, whether it's
yeah.
heteronormative or not. Like, if you're not being honest, or if you feel shame about a certain part of your life or apprehension of like, I don't want to share that I like anime or whatever it is, you won't match with people who someday are going to be like, oh my gosh, you love that too, I love that too.
Mm,
Be weird, be open, be honest on your profile. It doesn't mean you need to overshare. I don't have pictures of her on there. Like,
yeah.
you don't need to overshare, but you can give a genuine representation of who you are and what you're about, and then
Mm-hmm.
let other people match you. Like, I didn't take it personally when those guys unmatched me. I was like, okay, well, we were clearly never going to go on a date anyway. Get off my
Yep.
limit of 8 people, moving on, right? Like, because my goal is to enjoy dating and figure out what I want a relationship to look like, if I even want one in this new season.
Mm,
So that's something I'm honest about. And it's worked really well for me so far on the apps. And I'm actually enjoying it now. Whereas years ago, when I was first on the apps, I dreaded it and I couldn't wait to get off the apps fast enough. But my goals were so different because of that instinct,
mm-hmm.
biological, like, find this, find that, find this. I did all of that. I feel so free and so connected to
Yep.
myself and attuned, truly solely securely attached now dating, that it's actually fun to date. And I never thought I would say that, because you can go back and listen to old episodes that I was so grateful I never had to date again. Now I'm so
And
grateful I never
now
had to
we're
be in that
back.
fucking relationship again.
Yep.
Like, the day that it's turned, but I was meeting myself at every moment,
Mm,
partnered and unpartnered. I was authentic. And you know, because you had the behind the scenes, it was fucking brutal. It was rough, but it was so worthwhile to get to this point that now I'm back even more in my authentic self.
yeah.
And what a gift that eventually I can meet yet another person who can love me and appreciate me for that, and vice versa. That's great. The day that that
Mm-hmm.
happens, that's when I would be more serious with somebody. But until then, I'm enjoying securely going on the apps and seeing what's out there and
Well, and to speak to
exploring.
what you
Yeah.
just were talking about, you're talking
Yeah.
about like when I'm getting leads in the
Mm-hmm.
dating world, they
Mm-hmm.
actually are good leads. See,
Mm-hmm.
like the dating world and owning your own business, a lot of crossover here. In the beginning, when you own your
Very
own
true.
business,
Yeah.
you're like, I want any customer, I want
Mm-hmm.
everyone to buy my product.
I
I want
specialize in everything.
like,
Yeah.
especially as a therapist, I love to
Yeah.
like, who do you like to? Oh, I work with everyone
Everyone.
because there's such a desperation of like, I need
Yes.
clients, right?
So
That
true.
same desperation is in the dating circle of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll
Can be,
match with
yeah.
all sorts of people. Like, as you move through, and I think this is
I have
just
no
like
filter. Yeah.
wisdom
Yeah.
of like realizing actually, I don't like as a therapist, I'll tell you, I don't fit with everyone. I'm not everyone's,
Cup of whiskey.
yeah, I'm not
That's what
everyone's
I
cup of
say. Yeah.
whiskey. It's just I don't, and I'm no longer afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like your profile should sort of be an affront to people who don't fit
Yes.
you.
It should
Like if
turn people on
everyone
who
is
are
like,
a match
"Oh
and turn people
wow."
off who aren't. Yes. It
Exactly.
should
If
filter.
everyone reads it and says, "Oh my god, that sounds," then you've
You're not
written
being
yourself
real.
a terrible. You aren't IHOP, okay?
Yeah.
You don't have everything on the friggin' menu.
Cheesecake Factory. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to like, what are your go-tos? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like right now, maybe you're like, oh, but I'm not, no one's hit me up this week, right? Or no one's hit me up this
Mm-hmm.
month.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing
No.
because what we do know is you aren't appealing to the people who aren't willing to step up to you.
Totally.
Wonderful. I want you to
Yes.
have a level of intimidation because if
Mm-hmm.
there's not that intimidation there, if there's not that ability to have to summon courage to ask you out, then I'm telling you, you've put yourself on Dollar General pricing.
Yeah. And
This
that's
ain't
not
the
how
99-cent
anyone should
store.
date. No.
So
And no, you can't eat in a Michelin star restaurant every night and still appreciate it. Like if you're the IHOP Cheesecake Factory analogy, like of course people are going to match with you all the time. It's the same generalization with therapists. Like I provide a safe, non-judgmental, more. Of course you should. That's our fucking job. It's in our ethical code. I don't want to see that on your website. That should be a foregone conclusion given. Tell me why I want to work with you. Tell me why I want to date you.
every time
How
I
would we
read
be
that,
a good match?
time I read that, I know that's what they don't provide. Just
Yes.
like if that's in their dating,
Yes.
in their dating is like,
Yes.
I'm not creepy. Friggin' creepy.
You're a creep.
Okay?
You're probably gonna have a
Like,
Netflix special in a year. Yep.
exactly.
100%.
Like, believe the
Yes.
projection.
Yes.
Because you can cut out so much bullshit.
And the prompts that people pick, this is something to add too. The prompts people pick, you can totally tell, like if it's negative, like you should not go out with me. If you should, it's like, okay. Or my favorite is the dudes. I joked with you off air. Guys often write their profile like you're trying to date other men. Okay. I'm just going to tell you as a woman on a dating app, I don't want to see golfing. I don't want to see fishing. I don't want to see grilling. I don't want to see that listed as what we're going to do and bro out. Most women, I'm not saying we don't eventually do that in a relationship. I want to be clear. Most women, that's not going to be like, wow, and he invited me to go grill at his house. Like there's a give and take. I value that you value that. Maybe add it in a photo. But I showed you that guy. He was like, dating me is pretty chill until you tell me I can't go golf.
Perfect.
Left.
I already know who the mistress is in the relationship.
Yep. And we're done. Right. So, exactly. And that's a good filter. So as in my opinion, it's just my opinion, maybe other women share it, as terrible as that is to put on an app, that filtered it really well for me. He wasn't unattractive. Like,
honesty.
Yeah, he was conventionally like, oh, some girl might just look at a photo and say he's cute, but that's honest. So then when she's like, oh, but I want to go do this brunch with my girlfriends, whatever else, she's like, sorry, babe, I got to golf. And she's left disappointed. He told you from the beginning.
I got a foursome. What?
Yeah. I'm sorry. What? You're having threesomes and foursomes every weekend and I'm going to brunch alone, right? Like that's pretty much what it is. You want to date golf.
Welcome to golf.
Yeah. And if that's the season of life that you're in, again, be honest, but as the recipient of the profile where you're filtering, you're vetting them as much as they're vetting you. And guys, please put some effort into your profile if you want to actually get matches. Like, put some effort into it, but not a negative effort of like, here's everything I want. Here's what I want to know about you. I don't need a filter of what you want. I don't know you. I don't know if you're even worthwhile to match with. I need your profile to teach me about you. That's how every profile should be written. Some humor, some quip, some honesty, some vulnerability, a nice rounded blend of that. But I'm so sick of seeing men's profiles where they have terrible photos and the prompts look like they're basically trying to date another dude. What's the saying? Guys invented golf because they were too embarrassed to ask another guy to go on a walk with them. That's very true. Like, be a little bit more vulnerable and a little less inviting me to bro out. That's my request.
I mean, golf is the activity where strange men meet each other and play with each other's balls in the woods. So like it's I should have learned. It was right there in front of you. Anyway, so this was a wonderful podcast.
It was a great episode. Yes.
And I hope
and
that
we're
you
probably
guys
going to get
enjoyed
canceled, but that's fine. And if you do end up meeting somebody with our strategy, please message us and let us know.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
You're welcome in advance. Unless it's bad, then you're not welcome and we didn't do anything.
That was still your fault.
Yeah, that's your fault. If it's messed up, it's your fault. If it's not messed up, it's our game.
Definitely the podcast.
Thank you all for listening, and email us if you have topic ideas or DM us on Instagram. I'm at Talia Bombola.
Wild Ethos Counseling.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Between Two Clinicians. We would so appreciate if this episode resonated with you, for you to share it with somebody, and also find your favorite podcast platform and like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast. We would love to attract more listeners just like you and have this message be spread to whoever needs it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.